WebEx is back on.
Thank you. And FairTV? Thank you, Jerry. The Board of Selectmen second day budget hearing is called back into order. And we are going to, at the request of Selectwoman Nancy Lefkowitz, we're going to continue a bit on the conversation with the superintendent and the administration. So Nancy, would you like to?
Sure, I guess, and thank you. And I'm sorry that I am the reason we pulled you back after what I'm sure you would like to take as a long, luxurious lunch break. But I guess I just wanted to give the superintendent an opportunity so I could hear from him kind of one final push, because I know people are taking all of this very seriously. We all do. How we spend taxpayer dollars is not lost on us. And as I said, I hope that people will have an opportunity to reflect on not just the specific line items, but some of the values discussed. And I just wanted to hear from Mike one kind of final time, if you will. Is there something that you wish to leave us with in terms of what we should, when reading this budget, for those who haven't and those who have spent a lot of time enmeshed in it? What would you want our takeaway to be? I don't know if you're talking.
Still,
we can't hear you.
Mute, Mike.
Hear me? All right, I got muted. I apologize. I'm back. I appreciate the opportunity the question and the opportunity to answer that question. I think what really has to be that people have to keep in mind and is that, one, the commitment of the district to be wise in our spending. You know, the work that went into the budget this year from the beginnings back in the early fall with our staff and our building administrators, and then through the central office staff as we began to work through the requests, we were always very conscious of what that bottom line was, and we're very conscious of the environment in which we work and live in. And we're conscious as members of the town, broadly speaking, the Fairfield Public Schools being a member of the town, or our obligation to the town. That was very much part of our work. And but what surfaced in the final budget that we presented to the Board of Education, and I confidently say the Board of Education then supported it, sending to the town bodies, was a true focus on how we can move forward in some small ways of addressing the needs of our students. We didn't create a pandemic budget. We created a budget that rightfully, as all budgets should link and build on the budget that came before it and to the budgets that come after it, right? Because this really is a journey. And so I would ask that in consideration of the budget that's been presented, that people understand it as a whole, that it's appreciated as a whole, and that every effort was made to be wise in our spending and in our requests and our asks. But knowing that there's that reductions to it. Here, the budget that you have is at a very exposed level, in a sense that there's not a lot of skin on it. There's no skin on it. So any cut into it is going to impact our ability to deliver a program to our students. And as we've talked about during this meeting, those conversations absolutely must happen. I heard Mr. Flynn say, right, that there's a decision that a town has to make about the educational system that it can afford, and that's a very fair conversation. But I would ask that we have the time to hold that conversation properly, to do it right, and that we come up together with other town bodies and other town representatives, including our students, the ability to make those decisions wisely. Because if we make them wisely, they're going to last, extend beyond those budget years, and they'll become part of the work that we do in the district. So I hope I've answered your question, but that's how I feel. I think it's best that we be given the time to make the right decisions, strategic decisions going forward.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vitali has her hand up.
Yeah, I see.
And just to add to that, thank you, Selectman Lefkowitz. In terms of our fiscal responsibility, the Board of Education takes that seriously as well. And we didn't really talk about it in our earlier conversations, and you may or may not be aware that we reduced the superintendent's proposed budget by approximately $250,000. So some of those items that maybe could wait a year, or we didn't feel we could make the investment at this particular moment, we did reduce. We put off a paving project at Ludlow, hiring some additional custodial staff. The operational audit, we had talked about 10 years ago, had suggested that the school district bring on a full-time communications person. We currently have that role as part-time. The superintendent proposed moving it to full-time, coupled with a communications audit. The board elected to postpone, recognizing the value of it, but that right now, given that we are still coming, hopefully at the tail end of the pandemic, that it wasn't the right moment to make that type of investment. Brenda, I want to follow up with you just in terms of the communications audit. That was something that was brought up as maybe something that we could partner with the town moving forward about, Board of Ed and the town. So that was something that was also put on hold. Disinfecting of buses. So some of these low hanging fruit that maybe in past years might have been able to cushion a reduction made by other town bodies have already been picked by the Board of Ed. So I just want to put that out there as part of the record and for your decision making, moving forward over the next week as you're going through the budget again. And just to reiterate what Mike said, that this is really, as I said in the beginning, that really focused on the whole child, the investment in the social workers, really finding out where students are. We're excited to bring them back next week, but also very appreciative that for some, it's still not going to be a return to normal. They're still going to be wearing masks and going to have to be dealing with distancing, and it's not going to be, some restraints in some of the activities they're able to do. And it's weighing on them. It's weighing on us. It's weighing on our teachers. And we're really cautiously optimistic that September is going to be brighter. And this budget invests in that, and just bringing them past this really difficult time. So I thank you for your time this morning and this afternoon, and just ask for your continued support. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Vitali. Does anyone else want to mention or add any comments before we move to the next item?
I just want to extend my appreciation to the superintendent, to Mrs. Manzel. I know she works very hard on putting together the budget every year. It's an arduous task, so I'd like to thank them as well as their department heads for all their efforts. And Mrs. Vitali, I'd like to thank you and your board for your work and your diligence in putting this together as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll echo that. Thanks very much.
So if there's no further comment, I think we can release you. You can go have some lunch or get some work done.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. All right, our next item, I'm going to just take a little out of order because Mr. Schmidt is just finishing up his lunch. He's going to do finish debt service, and active retiree. Selectwoman Lefkowitz asked me to add my office budget to the presentation. And I just want to, for the record, say that I only included departments that were on our list last year. And so, so you can read, it's on page 45, my budget list, it's my budget message. Basically, office was restructured in 2019 to meet the needs of the town. in a modern municipal environment and to make the best use of our taxpayer funds by providing better oversight for town departments, providing clearer communication with department heads, and providing a highest level of response and communication to our citizens and legislative bodies. And so on page 47 is the personnel summary. We have the Chief Administrative Officer, which I added when I came into office, and was again included in the budget last year. Tom Bremer, and then the Deputy Chief of Staff, which is Jennifer Carpenter, and my Chief of Staff, which is Jackie Bertolone, who I would like to publicly announce, had her baby a little over a week ago, and his name is Vincent Aid Bertolone, and he's absolutely adorable. And we can't wait till we can have him come visit us at Town Hall. And my first selectman salary. And then at the bottom, you have the part-time selectman salary. And I'll open it up to any questions if there are any.
Thank you for this discussion. I just want to, there's just one change, an addition, which I'm curious about. The part-time, what is that job covering?
In my budget, your part-time is the selectman.
The part-time payroll is what that's accounted for? Because it says it's a change of 1.58%.
That's the selectman, right, Jared? Yes. Yeah, that's the two selectmen.
Sorry, so then it says the percent change is 1.68%. So what accounts for that?
I don't know. Jared, do you want to? That's what? That's the salary increase. That's a salary increase?
Is that?
He's saying yes, there's a salary increase in that. I don't know if it's contractual or not. Do you want to come up and speak about this? Sure.
That gets voted on by other town bodies, not by us.
Right, there was a 1% increase that was put in by our human resources department.
Sorry, I was on mute. It might have been put in there by the Human Resources Department. They don't decide it though. I believe it's voted on by other town bodies and outside our control.
Yeah, you know what, Tom? I didn't really take notice of this. Pam Iacona actually emailed me and asked me about it, and I wasn't sure what she was talking about. So I don't know if this is the
First Selectwoman, it's Chris Bacamazzo. Just for information, the RTM votes on the raises for the selectmen and all the selectmen. So that was probably voted in the last couple of years. We'll have to look at that.
What they do is they do it. They do it at the beginning of the term. They don't adjust it during the midst of the term. They do it at the beginning of the term, and then it stays for whatever the term is. Christine's absolutely right, but we don't vote on it.
Right, exactly. But I'm not sure how this got there, and as Christine just said, we're going to take a look at this because it may have just been an error.
Okay.
All right.
In other words, Nance, don't spend the $200 somewhere.
Yeah.
Listen, every dollar counts. It's not mine.
Right, exactly.
Because it's confusing because then well, I guess it's reflected here down below in the part-time current in the breakout. So anyway, we'll find out about that.
Yep, I'll get back to you about that.
Okay.
All right, so
as you sorry, one comment, as you had mentioned, there are, because I think people who are following along but don't get in the weeds of it, there are other things that the town spends money on, like different departments or the libraries or the various not-for-profits. So that is reflected in here, and I just want people who are listening, if it's something like you know, Operation Hope isn't mentioned. It's not because it's not being supported. It's just, so maybe, you know, it's here. So I just wanted to make that clear because I think that is confusing for at least a couple people that had asked me.
Sure.
Just because
and,
we haven't had a public discussion about it.
So to just be clear, we always have a list of nonprofits that are given some supplemental funding throughout the years. Last year, I did not approve any of the increases that any of the nonprofits asked us for because of the situation, and I thought they could maintain at their level, their current level. This year, I decided to include their requested increases in my budget. So all of their requested increases are reflected there where you can see those. One additional item I did add, and you're right, I should have talked about this, and I'm glad we are talking about it now, is that Operation Hope did come to me and share that they have been wanting to be included in the budget in the nonprofit list for a number of years, and so for whatever reason they weren't, and I decided to include them because I think they're probably one of the biggest nonprofits in our town who directly impact Fairfield residents every single day. So I added them in the budget, and I was hoping that we could have discussions, and I would assume, I know that the Board of Finance has literally every single department before them. So I would imagine they would want to have a discussion more about that. And I'm open to having that if anyone wants to ask why, or, you know, have a chance to call up Carla and talk to her more about it. And then we'll be voting on it on Monday.
Madam
I don't
First Select, oh, go ahead. Nance, go ahead.
I don't currently have questions, but as I spend, you know, between now and our voting meeting, if I find questions, I can try to get them answered in advance. Otherwise, I will bring them to the table next Monday, but nothing right now.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, as it relates to Operation Hope, I've been able to have conversations with Carla and worked a little bit when they, in the early stages of the pandemic with Operation Hope. And when you pointed out to me that you were putting a contribution there into their line item, it made sense to me, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that they were actually not on it from the forefront, given how much they do for the community and how much they stepped up, especially in the last year with the pandemic. So it just, that particular one just made sense with me. I also noted the other increase in the not-for-profits was Pequot Library for $50,000, which is that one-time roof contribution, half that roof contribution that we had talked about just a couple of weeks ago. So I was glad to see, thank you for putting that in the budget as was discussed. And I think Operation Hope, for all they do for the town, it is right that we partner with them. I'm a firm believer in these public-private partnerships because, quite frankly, I think it's the most efficient way that we sometimes deliver services to the most needy of our constituents. So thank you.
Thank you. So Jared's going to come up now and go over the items that we have listed on the agenda.
All right, we'll start with debt service.
Page
279. Okay. So
I'll
the
be
total amount that,
right back. Go ahead.
okay. The total amount that we have in the budget for debt service is $25.6 million. And that's to cover the principal and interest on both the long-term debt, 20-year bonds and other bonds, as well as our bond anticipation note, our band. So that amount, those amounts, the total of those amounts are offset by some bond premiums that we apply to those. And the way it works is if it's a premium on a band, then we apply that, we have to apply that within 1 year and use that premium within 1 year. If it's a premium that's on a bond, a regular bond, then we have to apply it within 3 years. And typically what we've done is split it up evenly over those 3 years and applied it to offset and decrease the total amount of our debt service. And so after looking at the principal and interest that's due and taking off, subtracting the premiums for both bands and the regular bonds, the total amount is $25,642,982 that we have in there.
And Jared, last year we used more bond premium from the debt service fund, did we not?
Last year we used more. We actually used 2.3 million in reserve, in our debt service reserve, as well as there was other bond premium that was used. I don't know if I have that number on me right now.
So when we look at this, though, it's not that our debt service cost has grown year over year. It's that our debt service cost last year was artificially low given the use of premiums to offset the amount. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. I think that's a good characterization. Yep.
All right. It's another one of those financial cliffs that were built into the budget last year that was ultimately approved.
Right. And
Okay.
And we're covering it here. So.
Is there any chance to refinance anything else at these historically low rates? Or are we kind of done with that at this point in time?
I think there will be. We're gonna, when it comes time for us to prepare, I don't know, do you have more detail on this, Caitlin?
In communication with Matt, our senior advisor. He's been watching this monthly.
Can you hear Caitlin?
I cannot.
Nope.
Okay, one second. Caitlin's been talking to our financial advisor, so she can get more detail.
So we've been corresponding with Matt from Phoenix Advisors, our financial advisors in terms of all of our debt. And basically every month he's looking at what's out there in terms of possible refunding issues. And when there does come a time that it makes sense for us to do it, we are definitely going to pull the trigger, but there's nothing on our short-term horizon as of now. As you recall, we did do a refunding back in April or May of last year. So we're pretty up to date on that. So again, he is watching it and we've been in communication.
Do we have any target amount in terms of, do we know, hey, we have, these amount of bonds that are at the highest interest rate in our portfolio, so we could redo those? I mean, do we know what that number is?
It doesn't make sense financially to do it unless there's a couple million in savings with all the costs that we incur as a result of doing it. So
Agreed.
break even. I don't know exactly what the number is, but he's been looking and there's nothing on our short-term horizon that would make sense as of now. Paid it last year.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, All right, any other questions there?
Not on debt service. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, not for me either.
Okay. Let's move on to pension. We'll do pension.
Yeah.
Page number?
269, I'm told.
269 starts with OPEB.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll just go in order then. We'll start with OPEB. So we don't have an aspect.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jared.
we don't have a final OPEB number right now. Our actuary is finalizing that number. So what we have is a preliminary number from them, and that's what's in here. It's funding 100% of the ADEC for OPEB.
How do I tie this to that number, Jared? Where do I? So I see that if I flip over the page, right, it's 271. If I go to 272,
Yeah.
where am I finding that funding number here? I'm trying to tie this back.
So it's if you go to the second column of numbers, 9.76.
Yeah.
You see that at the rate of return of 7%, Pub 210, MP 19. 9.76. So that's what we put in there.
Okay.
And
I
so
was
we take
wondering
this, and
that.
just for background, if you're looking at page 271, we take the town plan, that top row of numbers, and we add the police and fire. The WPCA is paid out of the WPCA budget. So that gives
Right.
So the 9.76 that you see is the 5.5 for police and fire plus the 3.945 for the town.
Right. And this was substantially lower last year because they dipped into this in order to, again, smooth the tax increase, correct?
That's right.
So to go further down your point, is that what justifies or how you reconcile such a big percentage increase?
That's right, because it was underfunded last year, or in the current budget.
Right.
Pretty dramatically. It basically, that full amount, that $3.9 million difference that you see there is about what the underfunding was. And so to get back on track, we needed to add that back in. And as the first Selectwoman pointed out when she was doing the budget presentation, if we didn't have this expense, this additional $3.9 million expense, I believe our town budget increase would only be 2.3, if I remember, 2.37%. So this is a huge, the single largest by far, the single largest driver of our budget increase.
Right. And so given that, and given we felt comfortable, again, given the extraordinary circumstances of last year, and just with an eye towards, is there wiggle room? And I understand it's a make good, so I know we don't want to skirt it so close, but it's 76.4%. And again, I know it's not a jump, so I'm not trying to be cagey, but is there room to kind of lower it to get to skirt it a little less?
Hey,
It's
Nancy.
been the Board of Finance's policy to fund this at 100%, other than last year when there was a one-time exception made. And so I know that they've had a, whether it's written or not, a policy to fund this at 100%, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're proposing for next year.
Hey, Nance, let me.
If I could just say, and I appreciate that, so I don't ask the question without that understanding. I guess the question is there an argument to be made to, again, given the percentage and the nature of the increase for the taxpayers? It's just an opportunity to stretch and look. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple things on this. This is our single most volatile and probably underfunded long-term liability. All right. And this is based on the contracts that were passed and improved in prior years by the town bodies, with the exception of the Board of Finance, which didn't approve these contracts. It's almost like ordering the dinner and then complaining when the check arrives. To complain about this one, as people sometimes do, because this is what they signed up for. Now, what makes this so volatile is a couple things. Number one, the rate of return on investments here, because this is what's done in standard across all municipalities or most is at 7%, which is a very high rate of return on an annualized basis. So you're probably overstating our level of fundedness because of that. Number two, it caps, and Jared, you might know off the top of your head, I can't remember, but it caps the rate of increase of medical costs on an annual basis at an absurdly low level, given the history. So you're basically saying your liability is growing at a very low rate and your return on investment is growing at a relatively aggressive rate. And that's what you're asking to fund. So this is the one that I would say you don't want to underfund because it's going to come back to bite you. And we've established a policy that was many years in the making, and we ramped it up to start funding this and start funding the long-term liability, which helps us with the credit rating agencies as well. So that's the way this one kind of works. That was the rationale behind what the Board of Finance did years ago. And that's why dipping into this last year in order to do that zero was a very, very big deal for the other town bodies. So that's it. I hope that helps provide some context.
It does. I appreciate it. I think people will see, you know, that number, and I think it's just important to ask the questions where we can.
I completely agree with you. Nobody's lobbying for, funding the long-term liability. So.
So just to jump in on this, Nancy, when I was building the budget, as I mentioned in my PowerPoint yesterday, I worked with Tom Flynn, and he's former chairman of the Board of Finance and the chairman of the Board of Finance directly to make sure we were putting things in this budget that we're going to be able to survive the town body, right? So obviously, I don't craft a budget and then just pass it on my own. So a lot of input went in, and this is hitting the marks where our town bodies wanted to see us hit. So that's why these things are funded to that level, in addition to what Mr. Flynn said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are we good? All set there?
Yes.
And we can move on to pension, which starts on page 273. Just flip the page. This is actually the amount of funding that we have in here is actually greater than 100%. We are fully funding the ADEC plus. Our ADEC actually, and what our actuaries say for the ADEC, the amount that they gave for the ADEC is I'm not seeing the amount here, but we're adding money to that, and essentially what we're doing is we're saying that we're going to fund it because the amount that they put forth in their actuarial analysis was actually less than what we're putting in this year. And that's just the way that their analysis worked. But what we did was we put in flat funding, so there's actually more in here than what we put in last year and what the actuaries had asked us to put in. And okay, so what the actuary said we need to put in is 11,608 into the pension fund, and what we included in the pension fund is 11.94.
Where can I find those numbers where can I find the calculation of the 11,608? Is that in here?
So it's in the backup.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Is it?
Yeah, if you go.
I just always like to tie this at.
So if you take the bottom numbers on each of those next two pages, page 274 and 275, you take the bottom numbers for July 1, 2020 column,
Yep.
you got 5.602 on page 274, and then at the bottom of 275, 6.006. So the
Right.
total, one of those, first one is for the town side, and the second one is for police and fire. And
Now,
put those,
are these final numbers, Jared?
yes,
Okay, so where OPEB could move a little bit, these won't move.
you don't move, that's right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other questions there?
Not for now, thank you.
Do you have anything left?
Oh, sorry. No, I've got.
You've got some stuff?
Yep. No, you don't.
Huh?
You did that.
What?
Active retiree. That's for the UTC.
Oh. Huh? Et cetera. That was the.
Oh. But it's in capital, and I was like, what is that? I thought it was like some acronym. I had no idea what it was. Okay. Yeah. All righty. Okay. Okay, that concludes the budget hearing section of our meeting today. I've got a few notes. I do want to mention the Board of Selectmen will vote Monday at 10 a.m. and the Board of Finance begins their deliberations on the 11th of next week. And I want to mention that the March Tree of Hope is lit at Sherman Green for this month for St. Baldrick. It is will be lit the entire month, and it is going to be lit in honor of our Fairfield teams. Team Catherine, Todd Goodfellow formed Team Catherine in honor of his niece, Catherine, who was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia 16 years ago when she was 3, and Catherine is doing well, and the team is still going strong, having raised over $80,000 to date. There's the Fighting Maloney's event at Stratfield Elementary School that has taken place since 2009 and has raised $700,000 to date. And Team Teddy, which began 11 years ago when Teddy Gerber, who was a 3rd grader at Osborne Hill School, was diagnosed with undifferentiated sarcoma. Since then, over 250 Shavies have participated, and the event has raised over $1.2 million to fund pediatric cancer research. And then the Shave event at Fairfield University, which was started in 2016, has raised $43,000 to date. Its biggest fundraising year was in 2019, where they raised $19,000. So I hope members of our community will stop by to see the Tree of Hope at the Green in lighting of St. Baldrick's, and that everyone will take maybe a moment. I'm a big supporter of Team Teddy every year, and I hope everyone will take a moment to donate, because this is important. It does go toward childhood cancer research, and it's been successful, and it's an important initiative. I want to just take a quick moment to acknowledge an email that I received from a resident this week from a mom who wrote to myself and Mr. Cummings in the Board of Ed about her daughter who's 6 years old and has a neuromuscular disorder, which caused her to have some weakness in her throat. And she was called on the 25th, Thursday the 25th, that her daughter was choking. And the paraprofessional, which I think this is really important, that Anne-Marie Imbrogno performed the Heimlich maneuver on her child and saved her life. And they are doing something at Jennings School today to acknowledge her, this paraprofessional. But this mom just wanted us to know that she was extraordinarily grateful for this paraprofessional and the nurse and the principal, all who assisted taking care of her child. And, you know, she mentioned that, you know, having your child be hurt when you're not there and having others take care of them is an extraordinarily humbling experience. So, and I actually know that quite well. So I think I want to just acknowledge this paraprofessional because God bless her. She helped save Stella's life.
That's fantastic.
It is really nice.
Amazing.
All right. If there's no further discussion, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I will second that motion.
Okay. All in
Thank you to
favor?
you both.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
You guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
See you
Bye.
on Monday.
See you Monday.
Take care.